this is Kasak Ma Keperu for Project Illuminated, and today I am making this video and I'm titling it Christian Ministers Are Evil. Now typically I don't like using that word evil because God too tells us nothing has a quality in and of itself, nothing is absolute, it's only your perspective that gives it its value. And the great Chinese I Ching oracle tells us that everything serves to further. So what does that mean? That means what you perceive as your enemy is really someone there to help you spiritually grow. They're there to present a challenge to you for you to stretch your spiritual muscle. So in fact, they're not really your enemy, but they're there to foster your development and growth. But going back to what I was saying is, I don't like using the term evil, but sometimes I have to facilitate the communication. I have to stoop down to a certain level of communication so that we both can understand each other. With that said, what I want to say is what makes these Christian ministers evil is not the fact that they, instead of engaging in true spirituality and religion, they have replaced religion with capitalism. That what they're doing is primarily for monetary gain. They're not there to save people, but they're there to make as much money off their congregation as possible. How are they doing that? By putting ATMs in their lobbies in their churches, by asking people to bring their W-2s to the church so they can see how much money you make, and by asking you to contribute $65 million so they can get a new jet plane or get a new mansion, get a new car. And that was the case recently with Creflo Dollar, asking his congregation to, I believe, donate, everyone individually donate about $300. So they can get a new jet plane, given the fact that most of the people in the congregation have a hard time paying their bills. This is deplorable behavior to ask them to give up what little money they have to a man who's very, very wealthy. People are having trouble putting food on the table, and yet these ministers are riding around in different cars. They have 2 or 3 houses or mansions, a couple of jet planes. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This is not men of God. This is not spiritual individuals. These are con artists. They're crooks. And let's look at the fact that the congregation is about 80% females, and that they cater their message directly to these women by telling these women things that they want to hear. Like, whatever is going on in their life, don't worry, God will save them. It's all the fault of the men. It's never their fault, And it's because most of these ministers are dating the women in the congregation, and they're living these double lives. Some of them are gay, they're on the down low. Others are having adulterous affairs because they're married. But yet, they're looked upon as men of God. If you look at these churches in the black community, you'll see that most of them are in dilapidated parts of the community. That all of this money that the congregation is given in the form of tithing has not gone to benefit the community, because the community has gone, in fact, the opposite. Instead of going up in terms of quality of life, it has become more dilapidated, more so a ghetto. And the church has prospered, and the people haven't. But yet the congregation continually pumps money into these ministers who call themselves prosperity ministers, because what they want you to believe is that if you follow God's advice, God will bless you with money. What kind of God bribes you into doing the right thing by rewarding you with money? You should do the right thing because it is the right thing, not because there's a possibility of financial gain. But as I said before, they replaced religion with capitalism. And you must understand that Christianity has caused more wars on this planet than any other religion. Yet, and here's my point, here is the greatest evil. That these ministers, and I want you to listen to this carefully, these ministers are going around speaking ill of your history. That's right. They're teaching members of their congregation to hate their own history. Listen to what these ministers are saying about Egypt or ancient Kemet. It's always negative. Oh, they believe in many gods, it's negative, the Pharaoh is evil. But yet, if you look at this civilization, where you study ancient Kemet, you'll understand that it existed for more than 10,000 years, where the United States hasn't existed for that long, and already it's having issues. Egypt was one of the most moral and upright civilizations ever that existed for over 10,000 years. For them to speak ill of our culture and our history speaks of a betrayal. These ministers are traitors. They are supporting white supremacy by getting black people to hate themselves, to hate the civilization that they built, to hate their history, their heritage, and their ancestors. But more importantly, these ministers are getting the people in the congregation to live in ignorance and stupidity, because they're teaching these people not to read anything else. Don't read, don't research, just believe in the Bible, read the Bible, and have blind faith. Everything will work out. So when you have congregations with these people who are so-called born again, they are some of the most narrow-minded, ignorant people you can ever engage into a conversation. They're not schooled on anything. Most of them think that the earth is only 6,000 years old, when clearly we can see fossils of dinosaurs and things of that nature. This, in my mind, has gone on for too long and too far. These ministers must be stopped. Because anytime you start messing with the masses of people's minds to get them to hate themselves, then you are part of the problem and not part of the solution. And they're masquerading as men of God, and they're not, because God would not condone such behavior. And for black people to support these ministers, to basically turn away from their own religion, which has given them so much. Now, let's just forget the fact that the ancient Kemetic people believed in different deities. If you don't want to study it or be involved in it from a religious, spiritual perspective, at least look at it from a historical perspective to where you can read about it and appreciate your history. Just as though you would read about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and appreciate that American history. Why can't you just appreciate the history that your ancestors built for you and established? But no, it's all evil and corrupt, and that's exactly the way the ministers want you to believe, because when it comes down to it, the Christian religion has not helped anyone. Because if the Christian religion was a real religion of God, there is no way that we would have had slavery, because most of the slave masters were Christians. How is it that you can have the KKK, a terrorist organization, proclaim itself a Christian organization? That is because Christianity does not have the power to change a man's heart, to transform an individual from bad to good. It doesn't have the power to do that, because if it did, you wouldn't have these Christian ministers, stealing money from their congregation, hustling the congregation, and you wouldn't have them teaching people how to hate themselves and their history in the manner in which they're doing now. I want you to think about this, because these are crimes against our people, and it must stop. We must not support these ministers who call themselves prosperity ministers to dupe the congregation into thinking, oh, if I do good, I'll get paid. What kind of thinking is that? That's all I want to say. I want you to think about this, because this is important. We have to put a stop to this, of supporting these mega churches that are getting away with taking all of this money out of the communities and leaving the communities, raping the communities, and not contributing and giving back to them. It's deplorable behavior. Anyway, this is Kasank Maa Keperu for Project Illuminated, and that's all for now.